Duke Snider ran into serious trouble over $100,000 in tax fraud charges, and it wasn't pretty. He tried to defend himself, saying he was just trying to bounce back after some bad investments drained his savings. But not everyone bought that excuse. People felt it didn't justify what he did, and as time went on, his troubles only seemed to pile up. Snider had an incredible baseball career, but he also found himself caught up in some serious trouble off the field. In 1995, both he and fellow Hall of Famer Willie McCovey pleaded guilty to federal tax fraud charges. It turned out they had failed to report income from sports card shows and memorabilia sales, money they had made on the side after their playing days were over. For Snider, that unreported income added up to $100,000 between 1984 and 1993. When the truth came out, he admitted that he had done it on purpose, explaining that he was struggling financially after bad investments drained his savings. Of course, the government wasn't too sympathetic to that excuse. Snider ended up having to pay $30,000 in back taxes, plus a $5,000 fine, and he was sentenced to 2 years of probation. McCovey faced a similar punishment, with a fine and probation as well. For years, the whole thing was a stain on both of their reputations. But in 2017, long after the dust had settled, President Barack Obama officially pardoned them, wiping the charges from their records. That wasn't the only controversy Snider found himself in during his career, though. Back in 1955, he put up an incredible season for the Brooklyn Dodgers and was a strong candidate for the National League MVP award. The race was tight, but in the end, his own teammate, Roy Campanella, took home the trophy. The final vote tally, Campanella won with 226 points, while Snider finished just behind him with 221. Each player received 8 first-place votes, so it really couldn't have been much closer. But then came the controversy. According to a widely believed story, a sports writer from Philadelphia, who had been hospitalized at the time, submitted a ballot where he accidentally wrote Campanella's name in both the first place and fifth place slots. Many believe that he had meant to write Snider's name in one of those spots instead. When the mistake was noticed, the Baseball Writers Association of America debated whether they should toss out the ballot entirely. In the end, they decided to keep it, counting the first-place vote for Campanella, but leaving the fifth-place vote blank. If they had disqualified the ballot, Snider would have won the award with 221 points to Campanella's 212. And if that fifth-place vote had gone to Snider as intended, he would have edged out Campanella by a single point, 227 to 226. However, not everyone is convinced this story is accurate. Sports writer Joe Posnanski has suggested that, while there was indeed a mix-up, the details weren't exactly as they had been told over the years. According to him, the mistaken votes were actually in the first and sixth place slots, not the first and fifth. If Snider had been given that sixth place vote, it wouldn't have given him the win outright. It would have resulted in a tie between him and Campanella. And unlike the original version of the story, where the fifth place spot was simply left blank, Posnanski claims the sixth-place slot wasn't discarded at all. Instead, all the other players on the ballot were bumped up one spot, and pitcher Jack Meyer was added in at the 10th-place position. Even though Snider didn't take home the MVP award, his dominance that year didn't go unnoticed. He was named the Sporting News National League Player of the Year and also won the Sid Mercer Award, given by the New York chapter of the BBWA to the best player in the league. So while the MVP may have slipped through his fingers, possibly due to a clerical error, there was no doubt among fans and writers alike that Snider was one of the best players in baseball that season. Now, speaking of just how great his career truly was, it's no surprise he earned such immense love and support from fans. Snider's baseball journey started early, and it didn't take long for people to notice his talent. Back in the early 1940s, one of Branch Rickey's scouts spotted him and saw something special. Before he even had a chance to think about a different career path, he was signed to a professional baseball contract right out of high school in 1943. Like most young players, Snider had to work his way up through the minor leagues before getting a real shot at the big time. In 1944, he got a brief taste of higher-level baseball when he played for the Montreal Royals, the Brooklyn Dodgers' top farm team in the International League. It wasn't much, he only had 2 at-bats, but it was a sign that the organization saw promise in him. That same year, he spent more time playing for the Newport News Dodgers in the Piedmont League, getting more experience and sharpening his skills. But just as his baseball career was starting to pick up speed, World War II changed everything. Like so many young men of his generation, Snider put baseball on hold and joined the U.S. Navy in 1945. He spent over a year serving his country before finally returning to the game he loved in 1946. When he got back, he jumped right back into minor league baseball, playing playing for the Fort Worth Cats that season. By 1947, he had moved up again. Snider's road to baseball. Greatness really took off in 1947 when he earned a tryout with the Brooklyn Dodgers during spring training. That was the year Jackie Robinson broke baseball's color barrier, and Snider was right there in the mix, getting his first taste of the major leagues. He made his debut on April 17th in just the second game of the season and wasted no time making an impact, smacking a single in his first at-bat. Over the next few months, he played in 39 more games and became friends with Robinson before being sent back down to the minor leagues with the St. Paul team in early July. But that wasn't the end of his season. Snider returned to Brooklyn just in time for the 1947 World Series against the Yankees, getting his first taste of postseason baseball. The following year, after another strong showing in spring training, he started the season with the Montreal Royals. Snider was on fire in the minors, hitting .327, and by August the Dodgers had seen enough. They called him back up to the big leagues. That time, he stayed longer, playing in 53 games and showing flashes of the star he would soon become. By 1949, Snider had officially arrived. He became a full-time major leaguer and quickly established himself as a key player in Brooklyn's powerful lineup. That season, he blasted 23 home runs, drove in 92 runs, and helped lead the Dodgers to yet another World Series. His batting average also took a big leap, improving from .244 to .292. With a little more experience under his belt, Snider became a major force in a Dodgers lineup packed with talent. He played alongside legends like Jackie Robinson, Roy Campanella, Pee Wee Reese, Gil Hodges, and Carl Furillo. This was a powerhouse team, and Snider was right in the middle of it. Fans loved him, and he earned a nickname that stuck. He became the Duke of Flatbush. By 1950, Snider was one of the league's best hitters. That year, he batted .321 and led the National League in both hits and total bases. He also earned his first All-Star selection, a sign that he was officially among baseball's elite. But success didn't always come easy. In 1951, his batting average dipped to .277, and that happened to be the year the Dodgers suffered one of the most heartbreaking collapses in baseball history. They had a 13-game lead in August, only to watch the New York Giants storm back and force a tie at the top of the standings. That led to a 3-game playoff, and in the final game, Bobby Thompson hit his legendary shot heard round the world, a walk-off home run that crushed the Dodgers and sent the Giants to the World Series instead. Snider took a lot of heat from fans and the media after that season. He was so frustrated that he actually went to Dodgers owner Walter O'Malley and told him he couldn't handle the pressure anymore. He even asked to be traded, but O'Malley didn't budge, and Snider stayed in Brooklyn. That turned out to be the right call, because over the next several years, he became one of the most dominant hitters in baseball. From 1953 to 1957, Snider was on another level. He hit 40 or more home runs in 5 straight seasons, something few players in history have ever done. During that stretch, he averaged 42 home runs, 124 runs batted in, 123 runs scored, and a .320 batting average. He led the National League in home runs, RBI, and runs scored in different seasons, and was a driving force behind the Dodgers' success. Brooklyn made it to the World Series 6 times during Snider's career, always facing the Yankees except for their final championship run in '59 against the Chicago White Sox. The highlight of Snider's career came in 1955 when the Dodgers finally broke through and won their first ever World Series, beating the Yankees in 7 games. That was the moment Brooklyn fans had been waiting for, and Snider was a huge part of it. Then, in 1959, even though his numbers were starting to decline, he helped the team win another championship, this time in Los Angeles. That move to LA in 1958 was tough on Snider. His power numbers dropped, partly because of an aching knee and partly because of the massive dimensions of the LA Coliseum, where the right field fence was a daunting 440 feet away. He managed just 15 home runs that season, a far cry from his usual numbers. But in 1959, he had one last great year, bouncing back to hit .308 with 23 home runs and 88 RB, while splitting time in the outfield with Don Demeter and rookie Ron Fairley. By the early 1960s, injuries and age had started to slow him down, and Snider was no longer an everyday player, but he still had a deep love for the game and was a respected veteran presence in the clubhouse. In 1962, as the Dodgers found themselves locked in a tense battle for the National League pennant with their longtime rivals, the San Francisco Giants, Snider, and third base coach Leo Durocher reportedly urged manager Walter Alston to bring in star pitcher Don Drysdale to close out the deciding playoff game. Instead, Alston went with Stan Williams to relieve a tiring Eddie Roebuck, and the decision backfired. The Dodgers blew a 4-2 lead in the ninth inning, losing 6-4 as the Giants staged a dramatic comeback to win the pennant. That heartbreaking loss marked the end of an era for Snider. Shortly after, the Dodgers sold him to the New York Mets. When the news broke, it hit his teammates hard, especially Drysdale, who had been Snider's longtime roommate. Some say Drysdale even broke down in tears when he heard that Snider was leaving. It was the end of his time in Dodger blue, but Snider's legacy was already set in stone. When Duke Snider joined the Mets in 1963, he ran into a small problem. His familiar number 4 was already taken by Charlie Neal. So for the first half of the season, he wore number 11. But as soon as Neal was traded, Snider got his beloved 4 back. That season, Snider hit 2 big milestones. On April 16th, he picked up his 2,000th career hit, a single off Jim Maloney of the Reds. Then on June 14th, he crushed his 400th home run, also against Cincinnati. He even made one last All-Star appearance, his 8th overall, though his final at-bat ended in a strikeout. By season's end, he had hit 243 with 14 home runs and 45 RBIs. Wanting one last shot at a championship, he asked to be traded. In 1964, the Mets sold him to the San Francisco Giants. He played just 91 games, hitting 210 with 4 home runs before retiring. Snider walked away from baseball with a 295 lifetime average, 407 homers, and a legacy as one of the game's all-time greats. That wraps up today's video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss an update. Thanks for watching.